Hi guys, we are on Mocha Chapter 6, starting at page 42. Yow! Charles jumped back, nearly tripping over Mocha. She stood, feet planted and her ears laid back, barking at the intercom. Who's that? Who's that? You don't sound very friendly. If you try to hurt my friends, I'll fight you. Buddy joined in the barking too. Let's get out of here, yelled Becky, turning to run back onto the road. Charles tried to follow her, but Mocha did not want to stop barking back at the intercom dogs. Charles was stuck. He couldn't leave Mocha, but he didn't want to stand there for even one more second. Any minute he expected a pack of slavering, sharp-toothed guard dogs, Dobermans maybe, with their sleek bodies and bullet-shaped heads, charging down the long driveway toward him. All he wanted was to get away before he saw those white teeth and red tongues up close. Come on, Mocha. Charles pulled at her leash. Please. Finally, after throwing in a few growls for good measure, she turned and trotted along after him. Yikes, said Becky when they were safely on the road again. She glanced back at the gate and gave a little shiver. Well, that answers one question anyway. That's not where Mocha's rescuer lives. Charles tried to catch his breath. He looked back too. What are you talking about? He said. His brain did not seem to be working so well. Becky wasn't making sense. He doesn't have dogs, remember? Becky said, in a duh, don't you get it kind of voice. He said he can't even care for a houseplant. So anyway, that can't be his place. We'll have to keep investigating if we want to find out who he is. Charles looked back at the gate. I think I've had enough investigating for one day, he said. Let's just go to the general store and get your mom's lemons. Becky shrugged. Fine, she said. She swaggered along, acting as though the dogs had not scared her one bit. But Charles noticed that she kept checking behind them as they walked. The store was just as Charles remembered it, warm and inviting, with squeaky old wooden floors and rows of shelves packed with everything from boxes of spaghetti to furniture polish. Charles could smell something delicious, maybe a pot of soup simmering on the stove. The only thing that was different was the woman at the cash register, making change for a customer. She had long gray hair and a nice smile, but she did not look familiar. Where's Mrs. Daniels? Charles whispered to Becky as they entered the store. Charles remembered Mrs. Daniels because she had always enjoyed hearing his latest knock-knock joke. She sold the store to Kim and Carolyn last July, Becky whispered back. That's Kim. Come on, I'll introduce you. Are you sure it's okay to bring the dogs in? Charles asked. The woman at the counter heard that. She smiled. We love dogs, she said. And these look like two excellent pups. She reached into a glass cookie jar and pulled out 2 big dog biscuits. Here you go, she said, coming around the counter to give one to each dog, along with a pat and a kiss on the head. This is my cousin Charles, Becky said. And the dogs are Buddy and Mocha. Hello, Buddy, said Kim. Hello, Mocha. Aren't you a pretty girl? She ruffled Mocha's ears. Carolyn will love this dog, she predicted. She had a husky once, and she likes big pups with curly tails. She stood up. Carolyn, she called, come meet some dogs. Carolyn came out from the kitchen in the back of the store, wiping her hands on a long white apron. She had short curly gray hair and wore silver-rimmed glasses. She beamed when she spotted the dogs. Well, hello, she said as she knelt to pet Buddy and Mocha. Mocha put 2 feet up on Carolyn's shoulders and leaned in for a puppy hug. Mocha, said Charles, down girl. Sometimes Mocha could be a little too friendly. Carolyn laughed. That's okay. I needed some puppy love today. She returned Mocha's hug and kissed her on the ear. Then she looked up at Kim. Lots of orders coming in for food. Everybody's panicking with this ice cream storm they're predicting. Kim nodded. I know. We're almost sold out of toilet paper and milk already. Speaking of milk, said Carolyn, straightening up. Now that your dogs have had a treat, maybe your kids would like a snack too. I just took a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies out of the oven. Charles and Becky looked at each other, shrugged and smiled. Home-baked cookies? Who could say no to that? Soon they found themselves on a bench in the back of the store, backs warmed by the wood stove, munching on their sweet treats. Casey's Cafe, Charles read the sign over the counter. Enter as strangers, leave as friends. Casey's Cafe is named after Kim and Carolyn. Their initials are KC. Get it? Becky asked. People sat at the tables chatting as they spooned up soup or sipped hot chocolate. The guy in the plaid jacket is Neil, Becky whispered, nudging Charles. He drives the town's snowplow, and his wife, Dot, raises goats. She pointed to another man. Wayne runs the gas station. Dad says he can fix anything. And that's Dean next to him. He takes care of some of the vacation homes around here. Buddy immediately curled up by the wood stove, but Mocha made her way around the table, saying hello to each person in turn, making friends out of strangers just like the sign said. Charles had never seen such a social dog. Each person in the cafe petted Mocha and cooed over her, and her tail wagged harder and harder. A big burst of laughter came from the table. No kidding. Charles heard the man named Dean say, "These second homeowners are helpless and clueless, too." He leaned in toward the others. "You know, those folks with the big stone house up on East Hill? I knew they were coming up for the holiday, so I got a place already. Laid logs in the fireplace and everything. The guy calls me last night to ask where the switch is." "Switch?" I asked. "To turn on the fire," he says. "Try a match," I told him. Everybody cracked up. Becky and Charles grinned at each other. It was fun to eavesdrop on this conversation. "That's nothing," said Neil. "Remember that old snowstorm we had last week? 2 inches of fluff? I plowed out that place up on Pleasant Street, but the guy was still too scared to drive down his own driveway. He called and begged me to tow him out to the main road. Can't wait to see how they all handle the big storm coming our way," said Neil. Wayne shook his head. "If you want to live out here in the sticks, you've got to know how to do for yourself, and maybe help a neighbor too. This town's going downhill fast if these are the kind of people moving in." Becky finished her cookie in 2 big bites, gulped down the last of her milk, and raised her eyebrows at Charles. He wondered what she had in mind. He found out soon. She pulled the handkerchief out of her pocket and looked at the monogram in the corner. "Do any of those people you're talking about have the initials AMI?" she asked when there was a lull in the conversation. Wayne scratched his head. Neil looked up at the ceiling. Dean knit his brows. Then they all shook their heads. "Nope, can't think of anyone. You got me." Just then Mocha pulled the handkerchief out of Becky's hand and ran to the door with it. A roar of laughter went up from the table. "Nice move, pup," said one of the guys. "Guess that means it's time to get going," said Becky. Charles and Becky leashed the dogs, zipped up their jackets, and headed home. "It doesn't sound like people like their new neighbors too much," said Charles as they walked. "Or at least they don't respect them." "I know," said Becky. "I'm glad my mom and dad know how to do stuff. Wayne is right. Those people shouldn't live in the country if they can't take care of themselves." She turned off the road onto a little path that wound through the woods. "Where are we going?" Charles asked as Becky and the dogs charged ahead, leaping over roots and rocks. But Charles slowed down. Where was the road? Were they even headed in the right direction? "This is the back way home." Becky turned to face him. She rolled her eyes. "Don't worry, I've taken this path 1,000,000 times. We won't get lost." Charles had to admit that Becky seemed to know her way, and sure enough, they soon found themselves back at the farmhouse. Aunt Abigail was wiping down the kitchen counter when they walked in. "Where are my lemons?" she asked. Alrighty, that is the end of chapter 6. I hope you're having a great day today, and if not, rest assured knowing God loves you anyway, and it will turn out fine one day. Alright, bye guys.